Good morning, everybody. It's Ross Allen Skorzewski, and I'm excited to be able to share this beautiful Wednesday morning with you for another edition of your Wednesday morning cup of crazy. And I don't know, I love that title just because that's what I feel like these episodes are. They're crazy, they're fast, they're whimsical, they're packed with information, and maybe you just might get something out of them, because sometimes I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, even though I'm just staring at a camera and being able to share the next 20 to 30 minutes with you. And just want to let you know that, like I said, we're back in the studio in Green Bay. It is a beautiful day, even though it is absolutely gloomy outside. It is pouring, but I will take it. I love a good soaky wet day. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for that cleansing cup of coffee. Let's take a sip, shall we, of organic coffee. Ladies and gentlemen, cheers. Here's to you for a Wednesday morning cup of crazy. Yes, it is beautiful to be back in the studio. We did have a wonderful time in Hawaii last week. Thank you for allowing us to take a little break there and get back into the swing of things. And that's what we're doing today. We had an amazing show yesterday with the Dr. Patrick Flynn Show, getting right back into the groove of things back here in Green Bay. And as you saw on yesterday's reminder, we're talking about fail forward. And the reason why I want to talk to you about this topic today, and it's something that we've talked about many times here in our own office here at the corporate office in the Wellness Way. As we've said, we're huge on personal growth and development, not only professionally, but also personally, because really the two are inseparable. Because when you're succeeding personally, it's going to influence your ability to succeed professionally or with other relationships around you. If you are succeeding only professionally, there's a good chance that it's going to possibly slightly skew your ability to succeed personally. The two have to really go hand in hand. And ever since we started this show on Wednesday mornings with this personal growth and development concept and putting into motion this idea that every day it's a choice to put out into the world the best representative of you, that somewhere along the lines, as we said even 2 weeks ago, we must unlearn some of the things that we've learned along this life journey that we've been on. There's systems of living, there's mindsets, there's behavioral patterns, there are ways of living that we've allowed to saturate our lives, things that bring about life and things that also bring about death. Now, obviously, when I use that phrase, I don't mean physical death. What I mean is an absolute stall, like a paralysis by analysis kind of mindset, instead of moving forward and experiencing success on personal or professional relational issues, that sometimes those broken patterns of living, those broken mindsets, those kind of societal influences that have brought us to who we are today, that have yet to be challenged, if not changed, prevent us from truly achieving the best possible chance of birthing that best representation of who we are. And the idea of fail forward comes down to this whole idea of personal growth and development. It's no different, really, to be honest with you, in any other area of your life. And I've experienced this. The word failure and it's just like we get along so well. It's like it's my alter ego to a degree. Why? Because it was a word that I grew up with all the time. I heard my teachers say it. I even had times, my mom would say, it was fine. I think she was, doing her best to really bring about a chance for me to see things from a different perspective. And as a single mom, and I love her dearly to this day, Mom, and thinking about you right now, prayers as you're with your sister who steps away from moving on to be with the big man upstairs and all the cousins. So I know you're probably watching in the hospital room. Actually, I hope you're not until you're dialed in. But the fact that even as a child, I struggled really bad in school. And I remember teachers pulling me aside and they're saying, you just fail and you're just going to, if you don't change, you're just going to continue to fail. And I heard it a couple times even at home, and because I know she struggled sometimes even as a single mom. My brother, 6 years older, and then there was me who just sometimes couldn't seem to get things right. That I really learned how to identify with failure. I learned how to identify with failure so much to the point that it literally was like second nature to me, and it didn't bother me because I heard the messaging so much from a young age, even through grade school, middle school, and then high school, that it was like if I wasn't failing, or if I wasn't getting poor grades, or if I wasn't ticking the teachers off or my mother off, then something was out of sync. Something wasn't right. And I actually found familiarity with it. And that's why 2 weeks ago, and that's why this whole time, even for me, as I know for you, when we talk about personal growth and development or putting into motion something new, this idea, this is not just about relationships, it's just not about professions, it's just not about personal growth and development. It can come down to decision for a weight loss program or getting back into the gym. This idea that we want to do something that's bigger and better, we do it for a moment in time, we get super excited and super jacked, and all of a sudden, we hit an obstacle, we get distracted, and boom, we stop, we stall, then we become analytical of that, and then the mind goes back to the place of going, son of a gun, no matter what I do, it's just not good enough, so we stop. We stop. But here's the thing, for me, I know for so many years in my younger life that set the stage and had set the stage for me to really wrestle with this in my 20s and 30s, and even sometimes now in my early 40s, this idea that I really do have the right to succeed. That I really do, that you really do have the right to fail forward. And what does that really mean? The concept of failing forward. And you can read great material that's out there. John Maxwell's got a book on it, and there are a lot of people that talk on this, and you can go in there and you can see article after article on this concept of failing forward. The idea, though, for Ross, and maybe you need to interpolate this and extrapolate a meaning and come up with a meaning that makes sense for you in your world so that it can resonate and motivate you to keep fighting the good fight, to keep putting one foot in front of the other and walking forward to bring about this best possible representation of yourself, whether it is exercise program, weight loss program, professional pursuits, relational pursuits, or just bettering yourself. But see, like I told you, I got so familiar with failure and I became so comfortable with it that it literally felt normal. I wasn't irritated by it. The reason why I wasn't irritated by it because I got familiar with disappointment. I got familiar with letdown. And at that point in time, at least I realized that, there was this concept, no matter what you do, it's just not good enough. I hated that feeling. I hate failure. I really do. I feel it deeply and I get emotional about it. But I remember when my mind changed perspectives, it was in 7th grade, when I had this altercation with a teacher where it caused a flip of a switch in my brain, and I said, you know what, if no matter how hard I try, no matter how good I do, or the best of my abilities right now that I put out there, that it's going to get slammed and it's going to get, shot down, if I can't control that response, you know what I can control? Is failure. I can control that and I can become comfortable with it and I can become really good at it, and at least I'm not letting myself down because I know that I'm going to end up failing and I'm going to let them down. So hey, at least I achieved my objective. But it wasn't really an issue with my teacher. It wasn't really an issue with my mom. Maybe there's some environmental influencers for sure, but it was a me problem, right? And even as we've come along these years, I've had to determine at some point in time that as I put into motion these ideas of bettering Ross, as I've told people along the way, even in this show, if I can't better this here and here so that I can really splash a little bit of meat on the world around me, if I can't better this, that's a drag, then I want to stop now. I want to know that in the midst of my pursuits now, professionally, personally, relationally, whatever that circumstance is, whatever that opportunity is that when an opportunity arises for me to push myself, to excel into an area that I maybe have yet to go before because of limited thinking that I've had to unlearn from all the years of being in just funky environments where there wasn't real strong personal growth and development, systems put into place for our betterment, that now I want to know that I can make mistakes, but not be defined by them. And for me, I've had to unlearn that these mistakes don't define me. These mistakes don't automatically translate over into failure. But that the idea is that I can make a mistake. You can make a mistake. You can start, stop. You can be distracted. You can do something in a relationship, say something in a relationship that's wrong, but you can make it right, but fail forward and not backward and stall out. See, the point of failure for Ross is when he gets to the place where he recognizes his mistake, then he becomes the individual that becomes emotional, overanalyzes, disconnects, and then automatically thinks that because of his past history, that that's how it's going to define this moment as I'm moving forward. That's not failing forward. The idea that I'm pushing myself to the limits, the idea that I am pushing myself to become a better version of myself professionally, relationally, in this world, that I can inspire people, educate, teach, lead, manage, whatever that looks like, that if I'm not pushing myself, but if I think that just because I'm pushing myself that I'm not going to experience adversity or troubles, letdowns, and mistakes, is crazy talk. And this is what I love about this, because sometimes we think when it comes to personal growth and development, when it comes to weight loss programs, when it comes to exercise programs, when it comes to recommitting in relationships, that we're wiping, maybe the slate clean and we're having a fresh start, but it doesn't mean that we're not ever going to have hiccups again. It doesn't mean that we are not going to have mistakes happen again. The idea for Ross, though, is hopefully those mistakes don't happen as often back to back to back to back, right? Relationally, professionally, with people. The idea, though, is that time comes. This concept, and I was reading articles, and I want to share this with you, and I've got a couple other quotes, because I really want to get this concept, an idea that failure defined as an ultimate failure. Ultimate failure for me is when you recognize and you go super analytical in that little space up here between your ears, and you overanalyze it, and you are overcome with whether it's guilt or shame or whatever, and you go into this really self-defeated mindset. Failure to me is the idea that the mistake is seen and you've walking through it and you've analyzed it, but you don't move forward, and that you punish yourself or you disconnect and you allow yourself to live in a limited mindset instead of experiencing breakthrough, which is still stinking hard. It really is. Personal growth and development, making mistakes and failing is hard. But the best part about personal growth and development, the best part of growing, and doing life, is having breakthroughs, is having success, is having victories. Parents, think about your children. That's what you long for. They make mistakes. And I even know this, it's not most of the time their intent. If you manage people, if you're, even a CEO, if you're an employer, whatever, or even if you're an employee, you have the best intentions at times, but yet you still make mistakes. And it's not even out of intentionality, but what you don't want, especially as a parent, as a manager, or as an employer, you don't want that mistake to define that person. You want that mistake to be a launching pad to self-betterment, to realization, to understanding, to action plans, right? Not to define them in the idea that it's going to paralyze them and cause them from experiencing true growth. And here's this awesome individual. His name is Cozy Namer. He's a client program manager at Google. He says this, drawing on his own experiences. First, I want to stop there. Even if you just heard me a few minutes ago talking about failure and how I learned how to identify with it as almost like it was this furry little monkey that always was on my back, and it was my Curious George. I became so comfortable, and it was normal, and it was like, almost soothing to me, because at least I knew I could do that and do that well. But I had to learn how to overcome this. I had to learn how to undo that kind of mental mindset, so that I could set myself up for success, not to be defined by failure. He says this, so experiences, literally, this is what it is for a lot of us. It's life's experiences that set the stage for us to either fail forward and understand the ability and the power to do so, or life experiences have created, unfortunately, a rut that we've stayed in mentally, where we become, like I said, we stall out. Our best intentions, we get distracted, and then we quit, and we go, oh, I knew I couldn't do it, and then we go backwards, and we allow our past to define us. Fail forward or fail backward. But he says the crux of failing fast and failing forward is really because becoming better because of your mistakes, not in spite of them. Not in spite of them, right? The idea that mistakes, my son is going to make mistakes. I promise the world around me that. I know he is. I know that my expectations of him far, exceed his expectations of himself. I know the parameters that I've set for him for living. We talk about it every night and every morning. And I know the way that I want him to approach his studies. I know the way that I want him to approach his relationship with his sister, his friends, and his mother. But I know he's still a growing young man who's at now 13 years old, in the middle of really beginning to start that journey of finding himself, that he is going to make mistakes. And to be honest with you, well, depending on the mistake, I'm okay with that. As long, number one, as if Papa, that's me, has done a successful job in creating a mindset that allows him to fail, but fail in an environment where he feels safe enough to fail so that he can fail forward. Not to the point of where failure or mistakes are happen, punishment occurs, and a talk, and this kind of idea, well, shame on you, I told you about this, you should, and then all of a sudden now that mistake in that moment has defined him, and instead of learning how to fail forward, what I've done is I've created an altered path, an alternate way of thinking for him to now put a filter in place to think that no matter what he does, it's just not good enough. Fail forward. Life experiences set the stage for us to really wrestle with this concept and to be able to understand it. But when it comes to unlearning what we have learned, when it comes to personal growth development strategies, mindset, positivity versus negativity, understanding obstacles, it's wonderful to have all that knowledge and information, but to think that just because we are digesting all of this information, even this show, that we're not going to experience mistakes and points of not ultimate failure, but moments of failure is ludicrous. It's insane to think that we are going to move forward just because of a flip of a switch and it's all, sunshines and rainbows and unicorns, right? And rainbow ice cream. I don't know. It's just not possible. It's not what happens. It's like when people get married, they think just because they put on a wedding ring that it's all of a sudden now going to be this Hollywood hyper romanticized relationship, where it's somewhere over the rainbow for the rest of their lives, and it's just no hiccup ever to be experienced. Wrong, right? But learning how to fail forward. But the idea, I love that, becoming better because of your mistakes, not in spite of them. Not in spite of them. Recognize the mistake, see it, acknowledge it, own it, chew it up, swallow it, and move on, because it's a beautiful thing to do. Also, John Maxwell, as I was telling you, has got great material, great material. He's probably one of the foremost, I would say, pillars in this arena. There are so many people out there that have information on personal growth and development, leadership, and what have you. But John Maxwell is highly influential. And if you ever have the opportunity to watch him speak, go. He is absolutely inspiring. It's like listening to, who's got the perfect voice, number one, but number two, the way he talks and he presents his information, it's as if you have one of Hollywood's best, with the best voices, reading you a story in a way that just sets the stage for you to think that you are the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's amazing. Check him out. Deviation, squirrel, quote. So, in that he says this, in life, the question is not if you will have problems, but how you are going to deal with your problems. If the possibility of failure were erased, what would you achieve in life? That's a great question. That is a great stinking question. If we could eliminate the possibility of failure, what would we allow ourselves mentally, what we would allow ourselves physically to possibly set the stage to experience on the level of success? How much of this really is a part of getting mindset right when it comes to wrestling with failure? Because it's inevitable. Mistakes, they're inevitable. But what if really it's not, like he's saying, the absence of mistakes, but it's the mindset that the mistake really has the moment to define your ability to grow fast, and then become, whether it's personally, relationally, professionally, what have you, that individual that for a moment in time had a hiccup, but it defined them and set the stage for them to experience success versus paralysis that moved them backwards to failure. Ultimate failure. Checking out. Stopping the growth pattern. Stopping from pursuing goals that you have set in your own personal life. That's why I say a lot of times parents, you wouldn't allow that to happen with your kids. You would never want them to embrace those types of mindsets. I don't want my children to. I don't want the people that I work with to. So why should I settle for that? Why should you settle for that? Fail forward. Another quote from John Maxwell in his book, Failing Forward, says this: embrace adversity and make failure a regular part of your life. The reason I went on a little bit of self-disclosure a little bit ago here, talking about in my childhood how I had heard this message of failure spoken over me so many times to the point of where I literally thought that, no matter what I did, I'm serious, it was like I could not rise to the occasion and be that which others expected me to be. It felt like I literally couldn't. Once again, feelings, right? Emotions, sending a message that I was wrestling with, and a message that was coming in that I thought was really in true form defining me. So instead of continuing to just fail people and feel miserable, I failed and identified with it and allowed it to actually be a point of success at one point in time, because at least I can control that. Now, that's not embracing failure in a positive way. That brings about life. That was embracing failure in a way that created a defining moment for me, to where I literally set a limitation on myself instead of pushing through and allowing positive messaging to come in, that I embraced that, allowed it to control and define a moment in my life, but it set the stage for me having to undo some crazy stinking thinking and behavioral patterns so many years later. The idea that John Maxwell would encourage us to embrace adversity and to make failure a regular part of your life is a very scary place to be. Not for everybody, though, because not everybody out there sees failure or mistakes as a point that defines them personally, that sends an emotional message that you suck as an individual, right? No, there's some people that see failure and adversity and they take it head on, and it's like a challenge, and this challenge won't define me. I will take this challenge and I will stake my claim and I will win. There are people like that, and those people drive me nuts. No, they don't actually. They inspire me, right? But at the same time, though, for people like me to embrace adversity and failure is a scary thing, because I have to prevent myself, which is an intentional choice, which a lot of this all is. It's an intentional choice to push through a thought pattern, to push through an emotion that is really trying to sneak in there from past experiences in life, but to come in and challenge that, say no, unlearn what you have learned, and therefore in the moment of failure, because it's going to happen, embrace it and embrace the adversity, but fail forward, and surrounding yourself with the right kind of people, the right kind of team, relationships that will hold you accountable and breathe life into you and give you that opportunity to fail forward. That's key. Then he moves on to say this: if you're not failing, you're probably really not moving forward. That's a whole nother show in itself, because nobody wants to experience failure. I get it. I get it. Nobody wants to let people down. It's one of my biggest pet peeves, but yet honestly, it's just something that, Ross does at times, right? But I'm in the process, and we all should be. And I think the process stops when we're pushing daisies up. That's when the process stops. We never arrive. We talked about that episodes ago. But if we're not experiencing failure, we're really not moving forward. That's reassuring. It's refreshing, but it's also annoying, because at some point in time, you're going to have to realize that even in your best intentions, Ross's best intentions, failure, mistakes are going to happen, but they don't have to define you. And you don't have to continue to hold in your hand the brush from the past to paint the picture of the future. That some of these thoughts, these ideas, these shows that we do, these personal growth and development shows and our trainings, that in there's pearls of wisdom, there's these thoughts that can come in and challenge your systems of living, your behavioral patterns, and potentially get you to the place where you flip that switch back over to the idea that failure truly doesn't define you, and create an opportunity for you to fail backward, but truly, in all honesty, to set the stage for success so that you can fail forward. And I just want to encourage every single one of you today that as you go about your day, that as you wrestle with life, as whether it's parenting and with your kids, or your professional relationships or personal relationships, ways that you've succeeded and ways that you failed, or the fear of failing again, is the idea that just be okay with failure as long as you're growing through that and moving forward. I want to just take a moment here and just pop on and see anybody who's there. And for some odd reason, there we go. Look at that. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for spending this time with me. I'm not seeing the names for some odd reason here, but let me just tell you this. I would love for some topics to come from you. If you have a topic that you would like me to talk on, or something that you would like me to dive into, you can personal message me, or you can put a question even in the comment section there if you would like. I know that your name's kind of attached to it, but if you want to keep it vague, like I said, you can send it directly to me. I would totally entertain that and would love to do that, just to create another opportunity to connect with you, the audience that I get to speak into week to week. Like and share. If you know that there are people that would want to have this and need this kind of material because you know that they too could benefit from it, by all means, bring them into our Wednesday morning cup of crazy. Let them enjoy the conversation. And you just never know, life might come from it. If not, a caffeine buzz will. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday for another Wednesday morning cup of crazy with me, Ross Allen Skorzewski, and I thank you once again.